Welcome to Far Louder, your official association podcast.
Hey, Far listeners, thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about short sales with Allie Allen from Century 21 Redwood, and she's going to give us a little bit of the ins and the outs and why it matters today. So, Allie, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love short sales. I've been doing short sales for the last 13 years. I got into real estate in 2008, so all I know was a depressed market. The last 5 years for me have been really interesting because suddenly everybody can afford their homes. So while short sales have definitely dwindled in the last 5 years, they are still out there. I recently just closed one that started out as a short sale, and because the market is so great, actually wound up being a full payoff and the owners got money back. So even if you start with me as a short sale, if the money is there, we'll put you into a regular sale. You don't have to go through the short sale. So that's been really fun for me to see the transition as the market comes up, and now that we've got the COVID and stuff possibly coming back down, but we'll get into that here in a minute.
Absolutely. So to start us off, can you explain a little bit about what a short sale is?
Sure. So if you've never heard of a short sale, you've been living under a rock, or you haven't done it in forever, a short sale is basically when a homeowner owes more than the house is worth. So for example, if a homeowner owes, say, $150,000 in their mortgage, and we put the house up for sale for $200,000, after all of the closing costs are reduced, after the commissions are reduced, title fees, etc., the payoff to the mortgage is now $100,000, or maybe $125,000. I won't go that low. So versus $150,000 to what they owe versus the $125,000, which is what they're getting, we have a $25,000 shortfall. So we're asking the bank, the lender, to wipe out and delete that $25,000. No longer collectible, no longer enforceable, any of that. So a common misnomer is that the short in short sale refers to time, but is actually the short payoff amount that we're actually asking to reduce and wipe out.
So really, it's just the bank saying, we'll forgive the debt for this amount because we're going to see our return now instead of later.
So what basically they're doing is they are getting rid of a non-producing loan. Again, at the height of short sales, everybody wasn't paying. So nobody was producing on these loans. They weren't making the banks any money. So they get rid of those and they bring in a buyer who is going to be called a producing loan, the person who's going to continue making their payments for those 30-some years. So that's what you're doing. You're getting rid of a non-producing loan for a producing loan.
Absolutely. Okay, very cool. So we've actually heard kind of a buzz around short sales right now. You can't really go anywhere without hearing people talking about thinking they're going to see them come up.
Yes.
What are some of the factors that are leading into this buzz around short sales right now?
Okay. So prior to COVID, so I'm going to take you back to 2019, before all the world went crazy. The main top 3 reasons for being a short sale at the time were relocation, divorce, and retirement. So it was no longer the sky's falling, my credit's shot, I'm losing my job. You have to remember, back in the bubble, not only were the sellers losing their jobs, but the buyers that were buying the properties were also losing their jobs. So we were losing contracts right and left. Now what we're seeing, like I said, is more divorce, relocation. It's the reduction in income. A lot of first lien full payoffs, but we're still negotiating a short sale on maybe their HELOC. Right now with COVID, what I'm raising my alarm bells on, the red flags that I'm seeing, are these forbearance loans. The people who have not paid their mortgage, whether they started back in 2020 or 2020, all the way through now, or sometime in between there. I do have one client who hasn't paid since February of 2020. So she's looking at possibly a 1.5 year non-payment loss. And we don't know what type of program the bank is going to offer her. This is completely uncharted territory, just like it was back in 2008. So what we can do is prepare our clients what's called a business decision. If they are facing financial difficulty, it is a business decision to sell it now while the property market is still so high, it's so great that they might still have equity to offset the losses that they're going to take in those forbearances. The other red flag that I see that I don't know if anybody's really asked, I haven't heard, please, if you know this answer, please call me and give me some info. What I'm afraid of is that the people who took a forbearance and are not paying down their principal, the interest may still be collecting. So while you have the equity, like my current seller just got an extra $50,000 equity. So you have this equity that's building, but if your principal is not being paid and that interest is coming up, eventually you're going to miss that mark. That's the red flag that I'm seeing. That's what I'm worried about. I think that's what everybody is kind of thinking. The difference here between 2007 and 2008 is that it's not that everybody is losing their job. Everybody's losing their savings. Everybody, including buyers, are going to be losing their jobs. No. Last year, there was so much free money in the market between PPP loans, SBA loans, stimulus money. Some people made hand over fist in stocks. So for me, I think the craze of the buyer market may dwindle down a little bit now that all of that free money is kind of gone. And with the forbearance ending in June, we'll see if they extend it again, along with the eviction and foreclosure, I can never say the word, moratorium, whenever that ends. That's a big trifecta that is about to burst. And I think a lot of people are going to fall through the cracks. They're going to have programs just like they did in 2007, 2008. They're going to try to put money in here. We've got the landlord relief, we've got renter relief, but you have to jump through those hoops to get it. And if you don't know that, you're just going to sit in your house and kind of bury your head in the sand and going, oh, well, they can't foreclose on me, they can't evict me. That's not true. They are evicting, they are foreclosing. If you have a property that's been abandoned and there's nobody to evict, you're at the front of the line. So please be careful on some of these things when you're talking to your clients. Please make sure that they understand that it is a business decision. Take the emotion out of it. I call it short-term pain for long-term gain, and we'll kind of go over that here in a little bit.
So a little bit back on what you said. For these property owners who did own rental properties who maybe didn't get a new tenant in there, they might be in a position where they need to sell the houses too coming.
Yes, so that's the other reason why we're seeing our rental market explode right now. Or similar to our buyer market, why there's no rentals, is because all of the people who held onto their properties in 2008, 2009, when the market dipped and became landlords, are now suddenly seeing their gains that if they held onto the property. So now they're selling them for top dollar, and now that rental property is now gone. We have several of those. I do some work with some property managers here where probably a good handful of the owners have decided not to re-rent and decided to sell instead. So it's all symbiotic and all connected with short sales and people's business decisions and the market and all of that. So if you have to remember back in 07, 08, when people lost their homes, it's because the adjustable rate went so high up. Okay. So somebody who paid interest only on $17,000 a month suddenly had their arm adjusted, and to add into the principal, their new payment was like, say, $2,200 a month. So they made the business decision to sell that as a short sale, and they went into a rental at $1,700 a month. So rentals became super popular because all of those homeowners now suddenly became renters. Those guys now are at a position where they should be able to buy again. So those guys are buying, they're now in the pool, and those rental houses are now being sold. So it's all intertwined from way back again 10 years ago, and here we are again in the same position. So for me, I'm just preparing everybody. I don't want the sky to fall. I don't want you to have to sell your house because of COVID or because of financial difficulty, but we are here for this purpose so that they don't fall into foreclosure. You don't want that. The short sale is always going to be better than foreclosure in the state of Virginia.
Absolutely. So definitely knowing how to be an agent to service those needs would be very important.
Absolutely.
What are some things that I would need to know as an agent looking to maybe start working with short sales?
Perfect. So as a listing agent for a short sale, you have to qualify the homeowner first before you even take the listing. So these are not going to be your typical listings where you're negotiating your commissions, you're negotiating condition compared to your other comparables. With short sales, when you do your CMA, you can generally discount about 5% off of that because you know that it's going to take a long time for the buyer to sit there and wait. You have a lot of work to do as the agent. So again, before you take the listing, you're going to have the one-on-one sit down with them and you're going to ask them what's going on. The more truthful your owner is with you, the better you can help them on the back end. It's all going to come out. Okay, there's no hiding in short sales. The bank's going to pull a credit report. The bank's going to pull a title report. We're going to know if there's extra liens or judgments on there. We're going to know if they have extra debts that they're not telling us about. You cannot hide in a short sale. So it is better for you as an agent and the customer to tell us up front what is going on, and we can put that information in our back pocket and use it to our advantage later down the road. So what I mean by that is if you were going through a divorce and somebody ran off with all the money, don't be ashamed by it. Just let me know where the money went and when it went. I need to know that it was on this month and this much was taken and this is how much I lost. I don't need to know that they ran off with so-and-so and, the whole emotional side of it.
You need the facts.
I need
of
the
case.
facts. You just need the facts, okay? So the reason being is that when you submit all of these documents to the bank, all the bank sees is words on paper, right? They don't have this emotional connection that we do when we're sitting across from them. I've had homeowners cry. I've had homeowners who have had death in the family, and the borrower, it's very difficult. You're dealing with somebody who's very angry that they have to sell. The banks don't want to work with me. They just want to foreclose. No, they don't. They don't want to own your home. They're not in the business of owning homes. They're in the business of making money with mortgages, right? So you are dealing with a lot of psychological issues with a homeowner in this type of position. So go in it and just ask those questions. Why are you facing I shouldn't say foreclosure. Why are you facing financial hardship? What drove you here? Was it divorce? Was it relocation? Was it COVID? Is it excessive credit? Do you just not have any more credit to be able to pay your debts? On top of that, then, once you get the financial statements, you want to make sure, because the bank is going to ask for 3 months of back pay stubs, and they're going to ask for 3 months of back bank statements. A good negotiator will then go through and say, okay, based on your income and expenses that you've given me for the previous month that I did, I will go through with a highlighter and I will do my own budget so I can see if you're actually telling me the truth or if you're not, because the bank will also go through your bank statements line by line. What they're looking for are your other bank accounts that you haven't given us. So they'll go through and they'll say, oh, well, you transferred this Bank of America account to bank account 123 for $500. Where's bank account 123? Again, you cannot hide. So being very, very upfront with that with the listing agent side. The other thing that you want to know is who is on title, who are you actually dealing with? Way back in the beginning, I had a husband who tried to sell the property without his wife's knowledge. Fun, super fun. So she called me all upset. I had no idea, but we did the title report, and sure enough, she's on title, she's on the loan, she has to be on the contract. That is a big common misconception too, or question that I get. If husband is on title, but husband and wife are on the loan, okay, husband and wife's documentation needs to be submitted to the bank, but you only have to worry about getting everything signed title-wise with the husband, or vice versa. So husband and wife are on title, but only husband's on the loan. You would only need the husband's financial documents, but husband and wife have to be on the contract and the listing agreement.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to juggle there.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of information. So that's why we talk about commissions. That's usually why the listing agents get a little bit more, is because we do have to do so much on the back end of collecting documents and who we're actually selling the property for.
Yeah.
Another common thing to ask is if they are currently facing foreclosure. With the foreclosure stay right now, that's not been a big question or common thing. But as we get into June and past that, when foreclosures start again, possibly, you want to ask if there's a foreclosure sale date within the next 30 days. The reason being is 9 times out of 10, most short sale lenders will not take a short sale file if there is a sale date within the 30 to 31 days. The reason being is that there's just not enough time to get documents together, get it listed, get an offer, get documents to them, get an appraisal done, and get it back to find out if that offer nets them more than the open market would.
So obviously there's a different timeline for every closing when it comes to short sales, but is there a general overview of a timeline that you can give us that maybe we could know where we would be in the process?
Yes. So generally speaking, short sales, the only thing that changes in short sales are the seller's financial situation. Everything else generally is the same. So you're going to have the same 30-day window for document collection. 30 to 60 days is going to be your appraisal time frame. So the appraisal being ordered, returned, reviewed. And then the next 60 to 90 days is going to be the final investor review. So no matter if you're on the listing side or you're on the buying side, your time frame should be somewhere between 75 to 90 days. 30 days for docs, another 30 days for the appraisal, another 30 days for the investor review.
Okay, so what are some of the steps that go on in each of those segments?
Okay. So depending on the loan type, we talked about FHA being different than conventional and VA. So I'm going to talk about FHA first, and then we'll talk about conventional and VA. FHA, they have what's called approval to participate. It's called ATP for short. What that means is that the seller is pre-approved to be determined to be eligible for short sale. So when you have the listing and you've got the listing going and it's active on the market, you're going to submit the listing agreement, an authorization, and the initial financial documents to the bank. I'm just going to use Bank of America as our example. So I'm going to submit everything to Bank of America. Bank of America is then going to issue me a phone number. The seller calls and does an interview. Once that's complete, Bank of America then determines that the seller is eligible for short sale, and they issue what's called the ATP. The ATP will have exactly what the value is that they're looking for. It will have the exact net they're looking for, so the payoff that they want, how many days that you have to get that, and if there's any money going back to the homeowner. Again, back in the heyday of short sales, when we had the half of credits and all of that, ATPs generally gave the homeowner about $3,000 to move out. Then it dropped down to $1,500 by a certain date and then zero to another date. I think it is now completely zero. Once the ATP is issued, any buyer who meets and or exceeds that minimum net requirement, their offer should be approved, pending review. So an FHA short sale, they are guaranteed 1% in closing costs for FHA buyers. Conventional and VA, you will have to ask for what's called a variance request. If you're asking for the full 3% on FHA buyer, you will have to ask for the variance request anyway. Then you have the final approval for the contract. So you have two-part approval on FHA. You have the seller approval, seller side only approval with the ATP, and then you have the contract approval. And you start FHA when you list the property. Conventional and VA short sales, you will start the short sale once you receive an offer. Once you receive the offer, then the bank knows how much they're going to get in their payoff, the value, they'll do their BPOs, all of that. So that's the only difference between FHA and conventional. But the same thing then happens. So this one, FHA starts the 60 days prior when you start listing. These guys start when you ratify, and then those 30, 60, 90 days start. Okay. So FHA starts just a little bit ahead of everybody else.
Okay. So you get approved, and then you have all of these. So what do you do when you start getting offers? Like, what do you do?
Okay. So the same thing would happen. Okay, take away the short sale, the name short sale when you have multiple offers, because it's a crazy market, right, guys? Multiple offers. You want to do the best that's the best for your client and what's going to best for the bank, okay? 9 times out of 10, you don't want to take a ridiculously low offer, okay? This is not the sky is falling and we're going to take an offer, like say $50,000, $60,000 under list, okay? In this crazy market, I highly doubt that would still happen anyway. But being realistic, okay, this was not the crazy market that we're going through. This is a normal market. If you list a property at $200,000, do not accept offers lower than, I would say, $175,000, because now you're trying to cover a gap, right? The bigger the gap, the more disappointment that buyer's going to have, the more disappointment the seller's going to have, the more disappointment and frustration you're going to have because you've done all this work and it just falls out. Right? So if I have an offer for $200,000 and I see that the listing agent has ratified an offer for $150,000, that just hurts my heart because we have a $50,000 gap between what you as the listing agent said the market value was worth and what you ratified. Don't do that to yourself. You have the opportunity to counter even before the bank sees it. So if you get a ridiculously low offer, counter. If they can't come up to that price, then don't waste your time. Okay? A $25,000 gap is much easier to cover than a $50,000 gap. So if I'm using that example, list price is $200,000, buyer made the offer of $150,000. Say the bank counters at $180,000. Well, we're only $20,000 off this price, but we're $30,000 off this price. So the buyer has to come up so much more than what the bank wants. Well, maybe the bank counters at $190,000. So you see what I'm saying? You've got to cover all of this big gap. Don't do that to your buyer. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to your seller. So be smart about your pricing. If you think, even as a short sale, and you've taken the condition and how long this process is going to take into consideration, and the property value is $200,000, don't deviate too far from that. I would only say $25,000 to $30,000 off list because the bank is going to do their own appraisal, their BPO, and all of that. So don't set yourself up for failure. Don't set your buyer up for failure. Okay, don't let them do that to you. Be realistic.
So there is a lot to know when you are being a buyer's agent.
Yes.
Or when you're being a seller's agent. What do you need to know when you're being the buyer's agent in those situations? What's kind of different about it?
Okay, so you have to take the knowledge that you have as a listing agent for short sales and put it to the test with buyer's agents. So you have to know where you are in the process as a buyer's agent. So as I said, all short sales have the same 30, 60 day, 90 day window. Okay. As a buyer's agent, the first question that you're going to ask is if it's an FHA short sale. As I said, FHA short sales can begin at the time of listing. So if you have an FHA listing and they haven't started, then you know automatically that your buyer's going to have to wait an additional 30 to 90 days on top of the original 30 to 90 days for the short sale review. There's not a whole lot they can do other than wait. The first 30 days is just document submission. So you're just calling up every week. Hey, is there any change? No? Cool, thanks. Keep right on trucking. Once you get to the 60-day mark, the 45-day, 60-day mark, that's when you want to start asking about the value being ordered, a negotiator being assigned. So I know earlier I used the equivalent of the roller coaster. So you have to think like, here's your listing here. Now we've got a contract. So our first 30 days, we're going up the roller coaster. The value is here. We're cresting the roller coaster. And then the investor review to the final decision, we're coming down the roller coaster. So basically, once your value is in, now you're just waiting for it to come in and that final investor review, okay? Those investor reviews take anywhere from 10 to 30 days. So it's all downhill. Once that value is in, you should know 10 to 30 days, I should have my final decision. Mm-hmm. So as a buyer's agent, you cannot call the lender. You cannot call the foreclosure attorney. You really have no power. You don't have the information that you need to get past the recordings, to get your authorization, to do all of that. The best thing you can do is sit tight and wait and reassure your buyer that the first 30 days of no updates is normal. And remember, 30 days is 30 business days, not 30 calendar days. So when I tell you 10 business days, that's 2 weeks in calendar days. So remind your buyer of that. Hey, today is only day 3 of 10. Today is day 25 of 30. We still have 5 more days. So the more that you're open with your buyer that this is normal, hold on, don't panic, the more that they're more confident that things are progressing, even when they don't seem like it on your end, because the back end, they're doing all kinds of stuff. As a buyer's agent, just make sure that you haven't missed any initials, make sure you've got your ratification date, make sure you've got a closing date, make sure your pre-approval letter is dated within the last 30 days, and just hold tight. That's really it.
As a buyer's agent, it really is important to know everything the seller's agent knows, though, because it is that process in knowing and having the confidence to tell your buyers, hey, it's been 30 days and we haven't heard anything. It's okay, because this is the process.
Yes.
And to be able to come with that authority to it. So
you don't have to know all of the ins and outs like a listing agent or like myself. You don't have to know the lingo, like certain lingo. But you do want to have a basic understanding of where you should be within your file review. I have had buyer's agents come to me in my office and say, hey, I've got a short sale. Is this normal? Where the listing agent has told this buyer agent, whoever you're talking to, please stop. No, I'm going to ask these questions because I'm going to ask very in-depth questions to know where it's at. That particular buyer's agent got a printout of the timeline of everything that was happening. I reviewed it. I said, yep, this is normal. This is normal. These are your next steps. This is what you should expect. It went off without a hitch. Her buyer closed within 4 weeks. So just be reassured. If you need help, call me. I will help you. I will help you with the questions that you need to ask to actually get you understanding of where you are in that process for a buyer's agent. Because like I said, it can be very daunting to not know, especially if you've never done them. You don't know what questions you should be asking to get the information that you need to give yourself and the buyer the confidence to stay on the contract.
So in a market where we are definitely seeing that short sales are going to be coming back, where sellers agents are going to need to know and buyers agents are going to need to be aware, if only there was a place there where they could take a class about this.
Oh no! Yes.
Oh my gosh! Like the FAR Academy's class, Short Sales 101, which will be July 16th. And anybody interested can register at bit.ly/short sales 101. The link will be in the description for the podcast today. But what else can we expect to learn in this class that we maybe didn't cover here today or couldn't go in depth on?
So the people that have taken the class prior have told me that it's like drinking water from a fire hose. Even talking with you in our little break here, you've said that you learned just a little bit tidbits from the little drips that I've given you. We are going very, very in depth. So we're going to talk about why people short sale, what to expect with COVID, what to expect with forbearance options, what questions you need to ask to pre-qual during the financial interview, what documents you're going to need to collect at the listing stage. There are case studies so that we really hone in on what the ATP is, what that actually means. We go over what happens if a borrower is deceased, if they're facing foreclosure in those 30 days, if there's an active or closed bankruptcy, if they're in active divorce. We've even done ones with active military overseas, how we do that over Zoom and DocuSign, all of that. And then the back end of that is how to buy a short sale, what to expect, what questions to ask the listing agent, terminology to know so that you know the lingo and what they're actually asking for and what these abbreviations and all these acronyms actually mean. And then we do some case studies. So the very last case study, you will see why I am so adamant about not saying approval until you actually have it in hand. You will see how that played out and why that case probably would have lost to a lesser agent if they didn't know what they were looking at.
Absolutely. Well, I'm personally very excited about this class. I've learned a lot today, and I hope you guys have as well. Please check out the FAR website if you're interested in taking the class. And again, the link will be in the description. Thank you for joining us today, and I will catch you guys on the next episode.
See you guys in class!